This is episode 41 of Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing with my guest, Fred Moskowitz. Fred is a public speaker, entrepreneur, and the author of the Little Green Book of Note Investing, which obviously we're going to get into. Fred, welcome to the show. It's great to meet you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
Yeah, so let's start with where your interest in real estate began, and maybe it began from a different portal than some others.
Oh yeah, real estate is it's wonderful. A little bit about how I got started though is I started out having a very long and successful career. I was working as a computer engineer, and I spent a lot of time working at different technology and startup companies. And what happened, Jonathan, was I watched my entire industry get turned completely upside down during the bursting of the dot-com bubble. And right around that time, we also had the September 11th terrorist attacks.
Yeah.
And so there was all of this turmoil in the world, and the economy was in shambles, especially the tech industry. And so I realized that I was way too dependent on the income from my job. Even though I loved the work I was doing, my job always was just full of so many circumstances completely out of my control. And I learned that no matter how talented of an engineer I was or how valuable of an employee I was, if things were not going well at the company or in the industry overall, I could quickly lose my job through no fault of my own. And so I came to this realization that I needed to have other sources of income so I wouldn't be so dependent on the paycheck from my job. And that is what inspired me to start learning about alternative investments and the whole idea around buying and building assets that you own, that generate income for you, and can even appreciate in value. And that's what led me to getting involved in real estate.
A couple things on that. I mean, you mentioned the word asset, which is my favorite word as it comes to investing, because I feel like so many people place the emphasis on just numbers instead of the actual asset. But this is like an alternative asset class because it's more of a paper asset, a note. So did you find that, I mean, of course you can accumulate more paper because you don't have to actually manage those buildings, and that's the differential in scale there, right?
Yeah, exactly. And if you notice something about banks and traditional lenders, they're not having any interest to own property at all. They rather lend on the property, become the secured lien holder in a very preferential security position, and then all the responsibilities of managing and upkeep of the property are borne by the owner. In addition to that, the liability as well. And so banks figured this out long ago. And what do banks do if they end up getting a property? They turn around and sell it immediately. They do not want to be in the business of owning property. And so it is a little bit of a different mindset and a different investment thesis that comes into play. But note investing is a very powerful asset class. I've watched so many people around me in the industry really scale and ramp up and become very successful, as well as folks in real estate. You can do very well. I think both asset classes, having both, it gives you a nice diversification. It really does. And so for some investors that are heavily invested in real estate, maybe mortgage notes is a way to diversify a little bit. What I find really appealing is that the cash flow is very steady and consistent. And no matter what happens in the marketplace, if property values go up or down, you're still getting the cash flow on a consistent basis.
Let's take a couple steps back for people who aren't familiar with note investing. So, explain just to the listeners how you buy mortgage notes and what you're actually buying, because I think it might be confusing for a novice, but it's really not as hard as it may sound. You just have to understand the terms and what you're getting.
Yes. So a typical mortgage note in the United States, it is, and a lot of real estate investors know about this from the perspective of being the borrower, not from the
Right.
perspective of being the lender. But buying, when you buy a note, you buy an existing note. Notes are bought and sold on the secondary market every single day. And I'm sure that most of the audience, most of you listeners have had this happen. Let's say you buy a property with financing, or you refinance a property, and wouldn't you know it, but it might not be 2 months or 3 months later, you get that letter from the lender saying, "Dear Mr. and Mrs. Homeowner, please be advised your loan is being sold. And here's the contact information of the new lender. And starting next month, please send your mortgage payments to the new lender. And by the way, don't worry, none of the terms of your financing have changed. Everything's the same, the interest rate, your payment amount, all of that. However, please start making your payments to the new lender." And so this happens every day, this scenario. And what is going on behind the scenes in the secondary market? Those mortgages are bought from Fannie Mae or from the originating lender. They may be packaged into mortgage-backed securities. And over time, those securities get broken down and all the assets get sold off again. And so they will change hands multiple times. And for us as investors, we can go into the secondary market and buy those notes. It's not something that's just for the banks, just for the lenders. And so what you get, back to your question, what do you get when you buy a loan? You get all the mortgage documents, right? Which is the note, the mortgage. There's something called an assignment of mortgage, which is a transferring document that gets recorded in the county courthouse where the property is located. It gets recorded on title, and think of it as an attachment or an addendum to the original mortgage. You have the original mortgage recorded, and then all the assignments of mortgage attached to that. And so that gives you the full chain of assignments between lenders when the mortgage is bought and sold. And so what this does is it's called perfecting the lien. And that puts on public record that the lender, the investor, is now the owner of this lien. And if title is transferred or if the property is refinanced, then that lien has to be addressed with the lender, and that will result in the loan getting paid off. And this is what happens when there's a closing, a transfer of title. The title company does that research. They will coordinate with each of the lenders, each of the lien holders, to clear those encumbrances from the title. And that way, if the property is being sold, a clean title is passed from the seller to the buyer. And
Right.
so, yeah, this is what we're buying. It's a security position, a security interest that that's backed by a payment stream, which is what's spelled out in the note. And
Yeah.
so the investor buys and steps into the shoes of the lender and now starts receiving that payment stream for the duration of the term of the loan.
I got a text this morning while I was on another call. I saw the text, and I always see it. But now you explaining, I was like, that's what I just delete them and mark them spam. But I was like, that's exactly what that was. Let me go back to something important that you said. That's, this is obviously about the mindful approach to real estate investing. And part of that we talk about on a lot of episodes is this fact that you talked about building relationships in these niche investing circles. You can only get to the gold with relationships, and it's
Yeah.
not a short-term thing, right? It takes a long time to get to know the right people and for them to get to know and trust you, because this isn't like, there's not 100,000 people at a conference about note investing right now, because it's complicated. So it does take a little while to build these. How did you do that, and how much impact has that relationship building had on your ability to acquire assets in this space?
Oh yes, this is such a powerful concept in our business. Relationships is one of the building blocks. It's fundamental. And in the note investing industry, we all know each other.
Yeah.
It's a small world. And so how do you build those relationships? You got to show up. You got to show up at conferences and events, learn how to connect with people, learn how to build relationships. And over time, you start building those relationships. You're doing transactions and being a good trading partner. A lot of it comes down to the way you show up in the world. Do you do everything that you say you're going to do? Do you make a transaction go smoothly, or do you show up in a way where you make the transaction go difficult with a lot of headaches? And that all leads to your success, because when you do a transaction where everyone has had an excellent experience, that note seller, guess what? The next time they have notes to sell, they're going to call you. They're going to call you before they start marketing out their notes for sale and say, "Hey, are you interested in taking a look at this?" A lot of things come from that, from building up that trust. And unfortunately, not everyone is of utmost trust and integrity. And word gets around quickly when someone doesn't behave in the best light possible. Let's put it that way. And so that's really really important, because word travels fast. It does. But a lot of the relationships that I've built over the years have come from showing up, from adding value to others, from being curious. And when you have a good track record, that's what is going to be your advertisement for you. Like, think of it as a personal marketing and advertisement for the way you show up, the way you conduct business on an ongoing basis.